Welcome to the October update of the New Haven Willoughby line. I've got a lot to show you, everything from paint chipping to bridge making, so stick around. So I have done a lot of work on the extension table, tried a lot of different things on here and had a lot of failures, but I think I've got some actual success going here now. I have painted the track for the most part. I really wanted to paint the inside of the rails in case I want to do any photography or video from the other side pointing out, even though it's not very scenic looking the other way. If I can get creative with some of the camera angles, I might be able to get some of the original table in the background, especially on this section here. But I really wanted to get the inside of the rails painted. So I did most of that, but I still probably need to do some more and double check. The lighting in this section is not that great, so I kind of am having a hard time figuring out what I've missed and what I've hit. I also had a hard time with the paint. My airbrush keeps clogging, and getting the balance of paint viscosity was kind of tricky for some reason on this one. Probably because I had done a lot of continuous airbrushing for that project, so I kind of ran into some problems. The airbrush I have is an old Badger 105. I forget what it is, but I've had it since I was in high school, since about 95, 96. So it's kind of old. I would really appreciate a gravity feed. The siphon is just not very practical for small applications. Granted, the track work was kind of a larger application. But I've painted the majority of the track rails. I'm going to go back and hand paint the sleepers or the ties because I like them to be a different color than the rail. And it doesn't match with what I initially had. If you can see, I know the rail, if you're looking at just the rail, you might be able to see the rail's a little bit more red on the new section, which I think is actually better. I think it's a little dull on the older side, but I need to paint the sleepers and hopefully get some contrast there. So that was a major project I spent last weekend on, painting all the track, and I wanted to get this bridge back in. So I've been working on this section a lot, getting all the track painted and then working on the road. And I had some major issues with the road. I tried some different techniques. I had a major problem getting this slope corrected. It was just terrible. It was terrible. So I'm pleased with the slope of things and the overall look of it. The weathering might be a little bit too heavy. I want to tone some of the lines down, but overall I'm pretty pleased with it. I tore this section up I don't know, 2 or 3 times, and then I had a hard time getting the coat, the color correct. Not the color, well, I had an issue with the color too, but the actual surface of the road, and I ended up just going back to plaster of Paris. I think I had tried some kind of ready-made spackle, which was just terrible. So I had that in sections. I thought that was going to smooth it out. I didn't learn from my mistakes the previous 2 times with that material, and it was just a disaster. So I went back with plaster of Paris mixed up. I have quite an extensive history with plaster of Paris, so I'm familiar with it, love it, know how to use it. So I got a pretty decent surface with the plaster of Paris. The width of the road is pretty ragged. Actually, looking at it here, this part gets wider. Once I put the scenery in, I can adjust things, but I used a real rough template. I think I used this thing here. as kind of a guide for the width of the road, especially when I was trying to smooth it out. So that was the road. So I got everything back in place so I could put the bridge up. It's still temporary. I can move it if I need to, take it out, which is great. I probably should temporarily tack the track down because it's not tacked down yet. I kind of don't like to make my bridges permanent in case I want to go back under there at some point. I will tack them down. I probably won't glue it and tack it and then ballast around it once I get things more finalized. But so that way all I have to do is reballast the section if I take it up. But I don't want to destroy the track, and certainly I don't want to make the bridge permanent. It is, for some reason, it is not level in the back here. It goes down. I tried to, I don't know if you can see under there, I put a little shim under there. I think I need to bring it up just a little bit. So I got that back in, ran them around a little bit last night, and most of the track I double checked after having painted it. I didn't check this section too thoroughly. I think I tried the inside track, but not the outside. It should be pretty clean unless I got some paint on that one turnout. But all of the crossovers worked fine, and these two spurs worked well. This section worked well. The only thing I noticed, and I kind of knew this when I made this section here, because I had a hard time that for some reason this piece of wood was higher up. That's kind of my own fault for cutting the wood too much, but when I got it from Home Depot or wherever I got the wood from, I don't have a pickup truck, so I had to fit it in my car. So I had cut it probably more than I should have, but that's kind of my problem. So if you notice here, the road bed is thinner here, and that's to compensate the fact that the piece of wood is too high. But it's still, there's still a bump here. Probably can't tell from there, but if I run two cars over, you'll see the couplers kind of go up and down on each other. So that's probably an issue I'm gonna have to resolve at some point. I did shim it to bring them up a little bit more, but I think I need to work on that section a little bit more. It's still fine, and if they uncouple in that section, it's close to where I'd be working anyways or controlling things, so it's not the end of the world, but I kind of like flawless operations, as probably everybody does. So that's one little thing I've noticed since I have painted the track and tested things again. I finally got the splices a little better, or where I cut the rails to have the lift out section a little bit better. I did put rail joiners on as many pieces as I could to help hold them. I couldn't get one in on this section, I don't think, but there's one here. There's two here that always have been, and I don't have any on this section, but I got it pretty good, and I haven't had any derailments. I had to I had to wire this section a lot better as well, which was a project I had to do. You can see I have the wire coming from here. This section was dead essentially, because I think I was relying on the power from this section, and these rail joiners just didn't hold the connectivity or electrical continuity. I'm probably using the wrong word there, but this part was essentially dead. So I had I had to direct wire it with feeders, and so I have wood underneath. It was a major pain with the construction of this thing, so I had to run the wires out probably to about here. So that's why I've got this terrain here. This will all get blended in, you won't even notice, but it was kind of a pain. I had to run the wires on top of the board here, and then disguise it with some Sculptamold. So once that gets scenery, that will be fine. You won't even notice, but that was one little project I did. So the next steps, and I've been slowly chipping away at painting the rocks. With the track painting, I would throw some washes down. With the road painting and some of the Sculptamold scenery painting under layers there, or undercoats, base layers, whatever, I would throw some more washes down depending on the colors I had. So I'm slowly building up the washes on the rock. Probably will do an alcohol and India ink wash to get some of the darker parts. I had airbrushed the really deep parts black, I think, a while ago. So there is some in there, but I just need to keep building up the layers. And then I think what's going to help this whole section here is a lot of vegetation to hide up as much of the rock as possible. I study the rocks around where I live on the sides of the highways and roads to see how the vegetation and rocks are formed and how the vegetation covers them up and hides them. So I'm thinking, I don't have a lot of room between the rocks and the tracks, but there's still a lot of space there to get some vegetation growing on top of the rocks, in front of them, and so forth. So that's going to be good. And then I've been plotting out, I think this was in my last update, where I had started to plot out some of the industries. So I've started to label and put the dimensions down on these things. This would be the Walthers planing, mill, and shed kit. I probably will only use the mill and not the shed if I were to get this kit for that section. And then I'm thinking the Walthers brick freight house possibly for this section. I desperately want another track here, and I didn't do this correctly in my plans. I didn't really have this area resolved. I was thinking of a roundhouse. I wasn't sure. So I think if I put a turnout here, this is an Atlas one, which I do not want to use. I have completely converted to Pico. If I do a right-handed, probably number 5 switch or 4 switch, this will work. It would be kind of nice to be able to keep the track that I have here, and then have probably just a track behind it. That will work. So that's in the near future. Hopefully soon I can get a turnout for this section and get another track laid in there, which will just help for storage and whatnot. So that's the track planning end of it. And then in the back, I had tentatively planned for the Greatland Sugar warehouse kit, which is actually, which I discovered is this flat building kit. I did not know where that came from, but that's the end of the Greatland Sugar warehouse. And then it came with that bonus side panel, so that's part of that. So hopefully I can get that kit and kind of disguise it. I kind of like the brick, the design of it, and the fact that it came with the smokestack, chimney, whatever. So that I think will fit in this section pretty nicely and disguise where that track kind of goes off to nowhere. It'll probably be used as a siding for that industry, but it kind of will help disguise that fact that that track just kind of ends there. Eventually I should probably get rid of this 2x4. It's holding up the conduit for the electrical that comes down to everything under here, the refrigerator and everything. But it's just hanging there basically from 2 nails probably at the top joists from the floor above me. So probably should have done that when I did the table, because I had everything kind of moved, but like most things in my life, I like to challenge myself by being lazy initially and then figuring it out later. So that's that industry. I've been plotting out where things will go on this hillside, whether it's more residential or commercial or both. I think I want to have a mixture. I can maybe fit 1 or 2 kits in that section, 1 or 2 in that section, 1 or 2 there. I initially wanted things on the other side of the street. I may be able to squeak 1 or 2 very narrow ones here, if that's not going to look too goofy. Maybe one in this section here instead. I'm not sure. I have to see. I might scratch build some stuff or kit bash. I'm not sure. I might put something there as well. I kind of built up the hill there to kind of disguise the fact that the road went so deep under. I've since built the road up a little bit more than initially I had it, so it doesn't go under. The clearance isn't that high. It's probably still relatively high. I know I've seen bridges around where I am in New England that are a lot lower than this, but I think that's somewhat realistic. So yeah, I built it. I might flatten this part out. I'm not sure. So yeah, and then I might put something there, and then have already started to work on the kit that's going to go here on this 2x4, and then I'm going to have another kit under here. So this one on top of here is actually going to be this guy here, which is Skip's Chicken and Ribs, I think, from DPM. And I have just put a coat of Vallejo paint chipping medium, this stuff. So I'm trying this out for the first time. So this should be interesting. I'm not sure if it came through my airbrush the way it should have. It was thicker than I thought. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's my airbrush or whatever, but I did a thin coat like they said. I'm letting it dry for 35 minutes, and then I'm going to airbrush it white and then see what happens. I'm not sure. I kind of did a rattle can undercoat that will serve as the undercoat here. I'm not sure how well that's going to work underneath, if it's going to be too close, or if I should have just painted everything darker. I don't know. We'll see. So this is the first time trying the paint chipping. I'm not sure how subtle or how obvious I want to make it, so I figured kind of do a light under painting. So we'll see how that works, and maybe at the end of this video I'll show you how the results came out. So that kit, once this is built, that's going to go on top of the 2x4, and then I'm going to probably be looking at another DPM kit. I'm not sure actually. So something else will go here a little bit lower, and then I'll build up the terrain and kind of complete it, and then this section will be pretty good to go. And I think that's pretty much it for the update. I've been working on a lot. I got a lot done. The road was a major project. The track painting was a major project as well. And I've got touching up to do on the turnouts and so forth, and double check the inside edge of the rail. Again, the light is hard in this section. Some of it looks good, some of it doesn't, so we'll see. So thanks for sticking around if you made it this far. Oh, one last thing, I picked up some paint last night. I think this will hopefully serve as a good rust color. It is these paints are all like pretty much the same. Some of them are easier. Oh, burnt sienna, so that's a basic artist color. This one is coffee bean, which I kind of liked. It's just a generic brown, and this for a lighter brown, which was cinnamon. And then I got two grays. I think I got medium gray. Yeah, medium gray, which I've used before. This was what I used for my road. It was a mixture. That was my other problem too, is I airbrushed the road initially, and I kept running out of paint, so I had to keep remixing, and then it didn't match. I probably should have made one of these mixed for what I was going to use, but of course I do everything the hard way. So in order to paint the track and the roads, it was like just a little bit more for each of those projects. It was just a little bit more than one of these things holds for paint, so that was kind of a challenge. You know, the real world's not completely all the same color, so that's fine, and that's why the rail doesn't bother me, that it's, you know, going to be two different colors. You know, that's perfectly natural to have variations, but when you're trying to paint a project or do a project and you run out, it's kind of frustrating. So lived and learned from that mistake. Whether I actually learned and won't repeat it is to be determined. But there was a video, I forget which video it was, or maybe it was a comment on a video that I watched this week, where someone mentioned that they can't stand when all the ballast is the same color, because it's not that way in real life, which is a great point and something I had never considered. And when I had ballasted my whole original layout, I spent way too much time geeking over ballast, and I ended up using all the same. And so now I'm thinking, oh, I should probably go back and have some variation. I know at least in the yard I definitely should, and that was always kind of a consideration. I did use some actual dirt on some parts and added some vegetation and things but there should be spots where there's just other colors of ballast, because, you know, again, the real world doesn't work where it's like they get, you know, all the same stone for, you know, the whole railroad. So that's something that I will probably change over time slowly. So that's something to consider. So when I actually do get to ballast this one, I might get 2 or 3 variations of ballast, so I can kind of mix it as I go, as opposed to going back and undoing. So that's something to consider. So lots of rambling this video update, lots of loss of words, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to get this update out. I'm gonna show you the results of the paint chipping on my Skip's chicken and ribs, and how that came out. So stick around in a minute, and that'll be coming up, and then we'll show some ops, some actual running, and that'll be it. So thanks for sticking around this far, and we'll see you. Okay, so like I promised, I was going to show a result segment here on the chipping. Again, I use the Vallejo chipping medium, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but I like the results. Some parts are better than others. It chips very nicely on these, the DPM kit. I used Rattle Can, I think white primer, and then if you had remembered, I put kind of a spackling of, I think a green and a brown on top. It was kind of hitting the bottom of both cans, so I was kind of getting a sputtering kind of, spattering kind of effect on top of the primer. And I didn't want anything like really dark underneath, so I could kind of be as subtle as it would allow me. And so then I airbrushed white. Well, actually, I airbrushed the chipping medium, which I was waiting for to dry. And then after that dried, I added an airbrushed layer of this. It's matte finish. It's, what is it? Titanium white, Snow Titanium white, acrylic. I don't think I let it dry enough, or I had too much water in it. When I was using the water on top, after that had dried, or sort of dried, when I was using a brush, the paint was mixing in on the brush, so I could see that I was kind of moving the paint around as it was dissolving, and I'm not sure if I didn't let it dry enough. I kind of expected it to come off drier, in a sense, without like re-wetting or reactivating the paint itself when I applied the water. So I'm not sure if I did that step correctly, but it came off, and you can see it does give a nice chipping effect. And I'm kind of impressed. It is darker than I thought it would be underneath with my layers of the spattering spray paint underneath, and it gives a nice overall weathered look. This part's probably a little heavy. I might be able to tone that down, but you know, from a distance, it looks kind of worn. I may apply a sign or something on top of or next to it or something. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased. It didn't work as I expected, but it gave the results I kind of was hoping for. So if anybody's got any tips on that, whether you have to really wet it, really let it dry, I'm not really sure. Again, I felt like when I applied water on a brush, it wiped away really easily, but I found that it was reactivating the paint, which I was a little concerned about, because then I felt like I wasn't getting fully underneath. I was like remixing the paint. It was kind of like, I don't know, tempera paint. When you get it wet, you can like rework it, and I was kind of just hoping to pull the layers off. So let me try again in this area. So just kind of wet. It hits the high marks really nicely. Add a little bit more water here. Let's see. So like that was really nice. So it pulls off very nicely. And I'm kind of scratching it. You can probably hear it. but it's hitting the bottom very nicely of those panels. And it's not doing it now, maybe because that part's drier. Maybe I'm not using as much water. But if you look at the water, you can see there's paint coming off. That's what I noticed too, is when I would clean the brush off, I would be pulling that white paint. And I guess that's what's expected. But I felt in some areas I was like remixing it on the actual model itself. So I was like building up, pulling it off, it was reactivating. And then I noticed, like, I think maybe in this section here, it just kind of got remixed. And so it kind of gave like another thin coat of the white paint on top. And you can see, I mean, I guess it is going to pull the paint off. And maybe that's what it's supposed to do, is reactivate it. And you just have to kind of do it quickly so you don't essentially repaint it with a thin watered down layer of paint. I'm not sure. I kind of wish I had done these parts, but I just had the white primer underneath, and then, or it might have been a gray primer. I think it might have been like a, oh, I forget the name of the rattle can color. It was Krylon, but you can see it's under here. That's the original color, and then the white is on top. And I just pretty much wiped most of that paint off. So yeah, again, overall, I was just a little surprised that the paint seemed to reactivate and re-blend itself on the model itself, but I guess that's what it's supposed to do. I'm not sure. I need to hit this area. I'm not liking this now. But I think I'm pretty good. So that's that. So enjoy some running, and I've been moving some stuff around in the meantime. So thanks again.